First, let's talk about Satan's influence on mankind. If you're looking for an answer of exactly how Satan influences the mind of men, you've really come to the wrong place this morning. The Bible doesn't really tell us how Satan influences mankind. It just says that he does. So let's look at what he says he does. We start with Judas here. Judas was influenced by Satan for evil. Look at verse 2. And the chief priests and scribes saw how they might kill him, for they feared the people. Then entered Satan into Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12, and he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray him unto them. And they were glad and covenanted to give him money. And he promised and sought opportunity to betray him unto them in the absence of the multitude. Now the evil deed was consummated, of course, with the murder of Jesus Christ on the cross. But Judas did not nail Jesus to the cross. Judas did not falsely accuse Jesus while he was on trial. What evil is Judas exactly guilty of? He simply showed the priests where Jesus was. And Jesus wasn't even hiding. He's in a public place. He's in the garden. Well, as it is with most things in life, it's not so much the deed itself. It's the intent behind the deed that is evil. We must remember that Judas was already inclined toward evil before he came under the influence of Satan. If we were to go to John chapter 12, verse 1, and you can turn there if you like. John chapter 12, verse 1, it says, and this is a parallel passage, it takes place at the same time. John chapter 12, verse 1. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Then saith one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which should betray him, why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and had the bag, and bare what was put therein. Aha! See, even 6 days before, there was evidence that Judas was already inclined toward evil. Judas's mind was already struggling with the worldly notion that he deserved more than he already had. Greed had already taken hold. Judas's will was already struggling with temptations toward theft. And Judas's heart was already struggling with feelings of pride and hatred. So Judas was already well on his way toward evil before Satan even came along. Now, I'd also like to point out another character in the Bible and kind of piggyback on what Wayne was talking about last week. Let's talk about Eve. Very similar situation here. Eve was influenced by Satan in her mind and in her will and in her heart also. Remember, God created Adam and planted a garden that would supply his every need. And then God gave Adam a law, and his obedience to that law would ensure eternity in that garden. Genesis chapter 2, verse 16. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. And then God, seeing that it was not good for man to be alone, created Eve, a companion to share his love and his life as they abided in the garden for eternity. Then Eve does a very evil deed. She enters into a contract with Satan. Again, Genesis chapter 3 and verse 1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast in the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruits of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. So now we read the story. When exactly did the evil deed occur? Was it at the moment Eve ate that forbidden fruit? Everybody who listened to the sermon last week knows that no, the evil was already there by that time. Was it at the moment that she entered into a contract with Satan? Was that when the evil deed occurred? Or was it the moment she entered into a conversation at all with Satan? Well, Eve was already inclined toward evil before she came under the influence of Satan. Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, it says once again, He said unto the woman, this is Satan, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. Now compare Eve's words with God's original law in chapter 2, where He said, And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. The trees of the garden, according to God, were a blessing to man. He says, Eat of the fruit and of each and every tree to your heart's content. Don't restrict yourselves from anything in this garden that is your heart's desire, with the exception of one tree. You see, God's original words reflect His goodness and His love in abundance. But Eve's words reflect hard-heartedness towards God because her emphasis is on the restriction instead of the blessing. Now Eve continues. She says, But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it,